Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Sam's33 here, and welcome to my next Card of the Day video. In our last episode, I mentioned that the card we're talking about today has turned the game upside down. Well, I'm going to show you exactly why that is right now. Today's card is Electrode. Electrode is a card from Plasma Freeze with the ability Magnetic Draw, which once per turn lets you draw until you have 4 cards in your hand. When it was released, it didn't really see much play, but once the Catcher Errata hit, it started gaining popularity in Blastoise and Raybor decks, and some other random decks as well. So, what do I think of Electrode right now? I'm actually a big fan of this card. This may come as a surprise, considering I absolutely hate Bicycle, which is just this card's ability but in item form, but there are a lot of differences between the two, as stupid as that sounds. The thing with Bicycle is once you play it, you're stuck with the 4 cards you've got, and they're often not very good cards. With Electrode, once you draw your 4 cards, you can use the ability again next turn, so you'll draw into a supporter or anything else you need much quicker. Electrode is also a really nice card against N. Even if you're put down to 1 or 2 cards, you can fill your hand right back up to 4, which is usually much easier to work with. If you set up Electrode early, it will definitely draw you more cards throughout the course of the game than Bicycle. It's also searchable with Ultra Ball and Level Ball, so those cards can turn into a way to draw you cards. Just like Bicycle, Electrode can promote aggressive playing by you playing down all your cards in your hand, but unlike Bicycle, you're not totally screwed if you don't draw a supporter, so you're able to hold on to more cards that you'd otherwise not want to play. It's also a great card to play with Lysandre, since when you play Lysandre, you can't draw cards with your supporter, so Electrode's a nice substitute on those turns you have to Lysandre. There are 2 other cards in the format similar to Electrode, in that they have abilities that draw you cards. The first is Musharna, whose ability lets you look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put one in your hand, and the other back on top of the deck. Muna also has an ability which lets you flip a coin, and if heads, the defending Pokemon is asleep, but if you flip tails, your active is asleep. Musharna's ability isn't as good in my opinion, since you're only drawing 1 card, whereas Electrode will usually draw you more than that. You do get to see 2 cards and pick the one you want, but then you'll top deck the other card you saw, which will make you go through your deck slower than if you drew 2 cards. It also has 100 HP, so it can't be searched out by Level Ball. And it has 3 Retreat, which can really get in the way sometimes. The other one is Delphox. It's a stage 2 with the same ability as Electrode, except it draws until you have 6 cards in your hand. Since it's a stage 2, it's a lot harder to get out, but those extra 2 cards can be pretty clutch. But one of the things with Electrode is it's an easy way to draw you cards and get you out of an N on a low hand size. Delphox is not easy to get out, so even some stage 2 decks may prefer to run Electrode. Delphox still isn't bad, since those 2 extra cards are really strong, but I would most of the time prefer to play Electrode. Raybor still obviously prefers Delphox, since you can use Blaze Ball in that deck, but for other decks I'd still play Electrode. So I believe Electrode is the best draw Pokemon in the format, but now it's time to look at what decks I think Electrode has a place in. Blastoise is where it's most commonly played. Blastoise being a stage 2 deck, it's inconsistent and can often draw dead or miss the cards it needs, even with Tropical Beach, and Electrode is great for doing both of those. Another situation that commonly comes up in Blastoise is being N to 1 and drawing a superior energy retrieval, but you can't play it because you don't have enough cards in your hand to discard, and Electrode lets you draw enough cards to let you play the card. Electrode is just overall a great inclusion in this deck. I would always play this card in Blastoise. The next best deck for Electrode is Charizard. It's a deck that uses a lot of its supporters on Blacksmith and Lysandre, so Electrode is a good way to have the deck still draw cards, but not have to use the supporter for the turn. Of course, this deck also plays Fiery Torch and Bicycle, but drawing more cards definitely can't hurt. I made a video on Charizard last week, so go check that out if you want to hear more about that deck. And finally, Yveltal is actually a pretty good home for Electrode as well. I've actually found this deck can often draw bad hands off of N, so Electrode is nice for that. It also just lets you go through cards super fast. Right before you play a Juniper, you often only have 1 or 2 cards in your hand, so Electrode will just make you burn through cards super quick and draw you all the cards you need. There was actually an Eviltall Electrode that made top 8 at the Filipino Nationals, so it's definitely not a combo that should be taken lightly. I also totally thought of, tested, and liked this card in Eviltall before it made top 8, so this guy's obviously just copying my idea. And that's Electrode for you. Overall, I'm going to give this card an 8 out of 10. It has quite a bit of nice little uses, and that's not even counting the great draw support it gives to a ton of decks. It turns cards like Ultra Ball and Level Ball into draw cards, and it's not a 90 HP EX like Jirachi is. It's just a really nice card that almost every deck can play. Thanks everyone for watching today's card of the day. I hope you all enjoyed. Make sure to comment on what you liked or didn't like about the video, or just give it a thumbs up or down to save you some time. I don't know quite yet what next episode will be about, but it will come for sure. See you guys next time. Later.